Catastrophic situation at Gaza's hospital amid Israeli raid. Trump's first criminal trial begins in March. Hello, good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for joining us. I'm Daryl Baptist and you're watching World Today. Scenes of chaos and panic bore testimony at the Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis as Israeli occupation forces stormed the medical facility in the southern Gaza Strip while Palestinians tried to escape. The Israeli army has besieged the facility for weeks, isolating thousands of patients, medical staff and displaced families, many of whom remain trapped inside. Verified video footage showed those who tried to flee on Thursday came under attack after leaving the hospital. Gaza Ministry of Health spokesperson Ashraf Al-Qudra said Israeli troops were forcing 95 medics, 191 patients and 165 displaced people into an old building at the medical center under harsh conditions without water, food or milk for children. Ashraf said the medical complex is witnessing a catastrophic, worrying situation because of the dwindling medical capacity as fuel is set to run out in the next 24 hours, which directly threatens the lives of patients, including 6 on respirators in intensive care and 3 children in incubators. The Israeli army accused Hamas of using the medical compound to hold captives, but so far it hasn't provided evidence for the claim. Hamas has vehemently denied it. Meanwhile, the United Nations aid chief warned on Thursday of the possibility of a spillover of Palestinians amassed in Rafah into Egypt if Israel launches a military operation against the border town. Martin Griffiths said the notion that the people of Gaza could evacuate to a safe place was an illusion.
An evacuation to a safe place in Gaza is an illusion. We need to push back on the calls that we're all hearing from the authorities to say, you must help us move the people of Gaza to some safe place. This is an illusion. And we will, of course, do whatever we can to help those people who want to move. I'm sure all of us together in our different ways. But we are not going to be in the lead of any forced evacuation. That should be clear.
More than 1 million Palestinians are crammed into Rafah on the border with Egypt. Many are living in tent camps and makeshift shelters after fleeing Israeli bombardments elsewhere in Gaza. Speaking at the same meeting as Griffiths, Mirjana Spoljarik, head of the International Committee of the Red Cross, or ICRC, said the absence of a clear evacuation plan, including for the sick and elderly, would bring suffering to a new level. At least 5 people were killed and 14 others injured in Russian attacks on several Ukrainian cities, including the capital Kyiv, which began on Wednesday and continued on Thursday. Kharkiv Governor Oleh Sinyahubov said 5 people were killed and 10 others were injured in the Russian forces' shelling of residential buildings in the village of Veliki Burlak on Wednesday. Meanwhile, Lviv Governor Maxim Kozitsky stated that 3 people were injured in his region during a Russian military attack on residential buildings in the administrative center on Thursday. Separately, Zaporizhia Governor Ivan Fedorov reported an attack in his region's administrative center that left 1 person injured. Serhiy Popko, the head of the Kyiv City Military Administration, said in another statement that Russia fired different types of missiles at the capital city, all of which were destroyed by air defense systems. He added that because none of the Russian missiles hit their targets, there have been no reports of casualties or property damage. The Ukrainian Air Force claimed to have shot down 13 of 26 missiles fired by the Russian military. The United States does not see signs of imminent war by North Korea despite a slew of confrontational actions and its refusal to talk to Washington. Jung Park, the State Department senior official handling North Korea, said the United States was taking no chances and would work to bolster deterrence with allies Japan and South Korea, but saw no recent notable shift. She said it was clear that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has decided that now is not the time to have dialogue and diplomacy, especially not with the United States. She reiterated that the United States is willing to talk without preconditions, but ruled out official acceptance of North Korea's nuclear program, seen as a major goal for Kim as he seeks to preserve his totalitarian dynasty. So far this year, Kim has declared South Korea his country's principal enemy, jettisoned agencies dedicated to reunification and outreach, and threatened war over territorial infringement. Pyongyang has also ramped up weapon tests, including for cruise missiles, an underwater nuclear weapon system, and a solid-fueled hypersonic ballistic missile. Venezuela's government has asked staff from the United Nations human rights body to leave the country within 3 days, saying it will conduct a revision of its cooperation with the organization, with the UN saying it would evaluate its next steps. The South American country's government said it had made a decision to suspend the activities of the Technical Advisory Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights and carry out a holistic revision of the technical cooperation terms. The review will take place over the next 30 days, the government said in a statement, adding that all UN personnel connected to the office must leave the country during the next 72 hours. Venezuelan state television on Wednesday harshly criticized comments by the UN's Special Rapporteur on the right to food, Michael Fakhri, who just concluded a visit to Venezuela. Fakhri had said in a statement the government food program does not tackle the root causes of hunger and is susceptible to political influences. The government also claimed that the UN Human Rights Office has played an inappropriate role in the country and supported impunity for people involved in attempts at assassination, coups, conspiracies, and other plots. Meanwhile, the United Nations expressed regret over Venezuela's decision and said it will evaluate its next steps.
I'm not saying it didn't happen or it happened. I just personally need to confirm what happened so I can react in a proper way and I don't have to retract myself 5 minutes later.
The United Nations said its guiding principle has been and remains the promotion and protection of the human rights of the people of Venezuela. Its Human Rights Office has operated in Venezuela since 2019 and has 13 staff in the country. Now from South America, we move to Africa. Senegal's Constitutional Council has overturned the postponement of this month's presidential election, a historic decision that opens up a realm of uncertainty for the traditionally stable West African nation. President Macky Sall's decision earlier this month to postpone the 25th February poll plunged Senegal into its worst crisis in decades, sparking widespread outcry and prompting deadly protests. Parliament later approved the delay until 15th December, but only after security forces stormed the building and removed some opposition lawmakers who opposed the bill. The vote paved the way for Sall, whose second term was due to expire in April, to remain in office until a successor is installed, probably not before 2025. Senegal's Constitutional Council said the law adopted by Parliament to delay the vote was unconstitutional, according to a document authenticated by a source within the institution. The constitutional body also annulled Sall's 3rd February decree that modified the electoral calendar just 3 weeks before the vote. The council said it was impossible to organize the presidential election on the initially scheduled date, but invited the competent authorities to hold it as soon as possible. Coming up next, Bangkok employees work from home as pollution chokes city. A New York judge has denied Donald Trump's request to dismiss criminal charges stemming from hush money paid to a porn star, paving the way for the first ever criminal trial of a former U.S. president. Trump, the frontrunner for the Republican nomination to challenge Democratic President Joe Biden in the 5th November U.S. election, has asked Justice Juan Merchan to toss a 34-count indictment, charging him with falsifying business records to cover up the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels before the 2016 election. Ahead of the hearing, Trump repeated his claims that the case is politically motivated. The trial was scheduled to start on 25th March, before the 3 other criminal cases Trump faces. Trump has pleaded not guilty. In the courtroom, his legal team argued he would not receive a fair trial in New York because another Manhattan jury awarded $83 million to E. Jean Carroll, a writer whom Trump was found to have sexually assaulted and defamed. Judge Juan Merchan rejected that, as well as arguments by Trump's lawyers that there was too much media coverage for a jury to be unbiased. A quarrel among several people sparked a shooting spree in Kansas City, Missouri, that killed a woman and wounded 22 people after a celebration of the city's NFL Super Bowl victory. Police said there was no apparent link to extremism. Police Chief Stacey Graves said 2 juveniles and an adult were being held as suspects. Several firearms had also been recovered. Graves said the catalyst was a dispute between several people, a conclusion that ruled out extremism and suggested the shooting was incidental to the celebration rather than a targeted attack.
First and foremost, I want to stress that preliminary investigative findings have shown there was no nexus to terrorism or homegrown violent extremism. This appeared to be a dispute between several people that ended in gunfire.
However, Graves did not elaborate on the origins of the disagreement, and details of the shooting itself remained vague. The barrage of gunfire on Wednesday unfolded near the city's landmark Union Station, whose front entrance was the backdrop to the stage for the victory rally, celebrating the Chiefs' Super Bowl triumph over the San Francisco 49ers. The sound of gunshots as the event was breaking up sent throngs scrambling for cover. 2 fans attending the rally ended up tackling and detaining one of the 3 suspects. At least 4 migrants died and 2 were missing after a boat carrying mostly Afghans capsized off Panama's Caribbean coast. The Public Security Ministry said the fatalities comprised 2 men and 2 women. The boat sank on Wednesday near the notorious jungles of the Darien Gap, through which a record number of migrants crossed last year from South America. According to the National Border Service, there were 27 migrants on the boat, 2 of which were missing. It added that most of the migrants were of Afghani nationality. It also said the waters where the boat capsized were particularly difficult to navigate due to waves, currents and winds. The Panamanian government noted that around 520,000 migrants entered Panama last year through the Darien Gap, a new record, including roughly 120,000 minors. While most were fleeing economic crisis in Venezuela, migrants from Africa and Asia also braved the lawless, virtually impassable rainforests that straddle Panama and Colombia in a bid to reach the United States. Bangkok city employees have been told to work from home to avoid harmful air pollution as a layer of noxious haze blanketed the Thai capital. City authorities asked for cooperation from employers to help workers in the city of about 11 million people avoid the pollution. Bangkok Governor Chachart Sitipant said that all city employees would work from home on Thursday and Friday. He said at least 20 of Bangkok's 50 districts were expected to have unhealthy levels of PM 2.5 particles, and the problem would linger because of calm weather. According to the air monitoring website IQ Air, levels of the most dangerous PM 2.5 particles, so tiny they can enter the bloodstream, were more than 15 times the World Health Organization's annual guideline. IQ Air ranked Bangkok among the 10 most polluted cities in the world yesterday morning. In order to tackle the problem, Prime Minister Srettha Thavisin said in the longer term, restricting high-polluting diesel cars in Bangkok could be an option, along with measures to promote electrical vehicles. Air quality in Thailand regularly plummets in the early months of the year, as smoke from farmers burning stubble in the fields adds to industrial emissions and vehicle exhaust fumes. From one weather condition to another, this time affecting a different part of the world. Much of Libya is bone-dry desert, but one Mediterranean coastal town is suffering the opposite problem. Its houses and fields have been inundated by a mysterious upsurge of groundwater. Stagnant water and squishy mud have flooded houses, streets and palm groves around the northwestern town of Zliten, spreading a foul smell and creating breeding grounds for mosquitoes. Many locals have fled their homes, where walls have cracked or collapsed, amid fears of a worsening environmental crisis in the area, about 160 kilometers east of the capital Tripoli. Almost 50 families have been relocated in the town of 350,000 people, known for its Sufi shrines, Al-Asmariya University and palm and olive groves. Prime Minister Abdul Hamid Dabiba vowed this month to remediate the crisis in a scientific and rapid manner and urged authorities to compensate or relocate displaced families. Locals in Zliten say the groundwater flooding is not new and point to reed-covered areas from years-old inundations. However, they also say the phenomenon has now hit them on a previously unknown scale. Indian farmers undeterred by a spate of injuries following clashes with security forces vowed on Thursday to keep up the protests. Police used tear gas and barricades to stop thousands of farmers from marching into the capital, New Delhi. The farmers demand that the government set a minimum price for all their produce to ensure they can sustain their livelihood. Over a dozen farmers received treatment for their broken limbs, swollen eyes and other injuries suffered in the past 2 days. Doctors treating the injured at the protest site said preliminary first aid was being provided at the site, while those with serious injuries were being transported to bigger hospitals in the nearby towns. The protest comes 2 years after Narendra Modi's government, following similar protests, repealed some farm laws and promised to find ways to ensure support prices for all farm produce. Local television showed farmers blocking rail traffic in several parts of Punjab to protest against the police action. Farmers protesting seems to be on the rise, as over in Spain, Spanish farmers kept up their protests, parking tractors outside the Agricultural Ministry in central Madrid before a meeting with Agriculture Minister Luis Planas to discuss the sector's troubles. Farmers slowly drove around 15 tractors, some decorated with Spanish flags, to the building which sits across the street from Madrid's busy Atocas train station, snarling traffic. Around 250 farmers and agricultural union representatives gathered in the rain outside the ministry before Planas began his meeting with Spain's main agricultural unions. Following the meeting, Planas announced a slew of measures he said met the sector's three demands. He said he would ask the European Union to simplify its common agricultural policy and would petition both the EU and World Trade Organization to ensure mirror clauses, which ensure that imported products respect EU agricultural rules, are imposed on pesticides and plant protection products. Planas also announced the creation of a National Information and Food Control Agency to protect farmers from suppressed prices. The union described the meeting as positive, but said they would continue their protests. Coming up in sports, Klinsmann faces sack by South Korea after Asian Cup semi-final exit. Two-time champions Al-Ittihad and Uzbekistan's Nafbahor will go into the second leg of their AFC Champions League 2023-2024 round of 16 meeting in Jeddah next week, with all to play for, after the teams shared a goalless draw at Markazi Stadium on Thursday. Al Ittihad carved their way through the Naf Bahor defence in the early exchanges, with Marwan Al-Sahafi shooting into Ukir Yusupov's hands after cutting in from the right and striking on the run. Abdul Razak Hamidallah then rattled the goalkeeper's left post from 8 yards out, while Hassan Kadish glanced his header across the face of goal at a corner, all with barely 10 minutes gone. But after Romarinho blazed his shot over the bar when given a sight of goal in the 15th minute, the home side settled as the half wore on. The stalemate continued into the second half, with Hamidallah and Ahmad Higazi both missing for the visitors, and Al Ittihad goalkeeper Abdullah Al Muayyuf was only called into action with 15 minutes remaining. Neither side could find a way through in front of a bumper crowd in eastern Uzbekistan, and the teams will have another 90 minutes, plus the possibility of extra time and penalties at the King Abdullah Sports City Stadium next Thursday to determine who progresses. In Iran, Al Hilal came from behind to defeat Sepahan 3-1 in the first leg of their second round clash in the Champions League. After a tight opening, Al Hilal had a good chance after 28 minutes. Saud Abdullah Hamid swung over a tempting cross and Salim Al-Dawsari headed wide, taking the chance away from Mitrovic, who was waiting unmarked just behind. Just when it was starting to look like the teams would go in goalless, at the break, Sepahan struck after 38 minutes. A long pass from the edge of the host's penalty area bounced deep inside the Al Hilal half for the onrushing Ramin Razayan, who thundered his shot across the goalkeeper and into the opposite corner of the net. The four-time champions were soon back in it. 10 minutes after the restart, Alexander Mitrovic had his first sight of goal, and while his low shot was saved, Malcolm prodded home the rebound to silence the home crowd. Both teams continued to make chances, but it was Al Hilal who gained an advantage with just over 10 minutes left when Mohammad Daneshgar was shown a red card for a late tackle. In the 94th minute, Mitrovic climbed high to head home a fine cross from Abdul Hamid to break the hearts of the Iranians, who then suffered another goal from Abdullah Al-Hamdan. The Iranians now go to Riyadh next Thursday knowing they need a big win. Sticking to Asian football, a Korea Football Association, or more commonly referred to as KFA, advisory committee recommended sacking head coach Jurgen Klinsmann after their semi-final exit at the Asian Cup and amid criticism of his leadership. South Korea, 23rd in the FIFA rankings, were eliminated by 87th ranked Jordan in the Asian Cup semi-finals earlier this month, prompting fans and some politicians to call for the 59-year-old's dismissal.
전술적인 준비가 부족했습니다. 또 재임 기간 중 선수 선발과 관련해서 감독이 직접 다양한 선수를 보고 발굴하려는 의지가 보이지 않았다는 의견이 있었습니다.
Many who criticized his demeanor during the tournament, smiling even when things were not going his team's way on the field. Off the field, Klinsmann faced criticisms for often working outside South Korea, despite saying otherwise. The German participated via video call in Thursday's meeting, which also came after a brawl between captain Son Heung-min and midfielder Lee Kang-in, prompting more questions about his lack of guidance in setting the team's discipline. The national team committee does not make administrative decisions, leaving it up to the KFA's executive board whether to act on its recommendation to fire Klinsmann, whose contract runs through to the 2026 World Cup. France striker Kylian Mbappe has told Paris Saint-Germain he intends to leave the club at the end of the season. The 25-year-old's deal with Ligue 1 champions is scheduled to expire as he has been heavily linked with a move to Real Madrid. Mbappe's future was the subject of a major standoff with PSG last summer. At one point, Mbappe was exiled from the first-team squad and left out of the club's pre-season tour of Asia. However, an agreement was reached that ensured PSG would not lose out when Mbappe eventually left, and the terms of his now seemingly inevitable exit are still to be confirmed. The forward has a one-year extension clause, so it is expected his departure will involve either a sale with a transfer fee or financial sacrifices on the player's part. Whilst PSG would have wanted Mbappe to remain at the club, his exit looks set to come as they aim to build a younger squad and move away from the Galacticos plan that has also seen Argentina forward Lionel Messi and Brazil international Neymar leave since the end of last season. It is estimated Mbappe, who won the World Cup with France in 2018, earns around 200 million euros per year. Overall, he has 243 goals and 93 assists in 290 games for PSG and has helped the club to 5 League One title wins. In the world of tennis, Australian Open champion Yannick Sinner overcame a stubborn fight back by veteran Frenchman Gaël Monfils to battle into the Rotterdam Open quarter-finals with a 6-3, 3-6, 6-3 win. The 22-year-old Italian showed the imperious form that took him to victory in Melbourne from the start, racing into a 3-love first-set lead. Wildcard Monfils entertained the crowd with some trademark retrieving and the occasional trick shot, but initially had no answer to Sinner's consistency, losing the first set to the Italian. But the Frenchman rolled back the years in the second set, delighting the Rotterdam crowd that saw him win back-to-back titles in 2019 and 2020. Cleverly mixing blistering forehands and well-judged drop shots, he disturbed Sinner's rhythm and broke serve early in the second set, hanging on to close it out 6-3. A poor Monfils' first service game in the deciding set, riddled with unforced errors and a double fault, handed the initiative back to the Italian, who again opened up a 3-love advantage. Sinner's relentless pressure paid off, and the world number 4 eventually broke the French resistance, finishing off the third set 6-3. In motorsports, Red Bull unveiled their new car named RB20 for the 2024 Formula One season on Thursday at their factory in Milton Keynes. The presentation celebrated the team's 20 years in the Formula One that has seen them win 7 drivers' titles and 6 constructors' championships. Red Bull team boss Christian Horner was present as a company inquiry into undisclosed allegations about his conduct hung over the Formula One champion's car launch. Testing starts next Wednesday before the 2nd March season opener in Bahrain. Red Bull won all but one of the races last season, with Dutch driver Max Verstappen taking his 3rd title in a row with 19 out of 22 race wins. Teammate Sergio Perez won 2 races to finish 2nd overall, while Ferrari's Carlos Sainz took victory in Singapore in the only non-Red Bull victory. Verstappen is a huge favourite to claim a 4th consecutive world title, but the 26-year-old accepted his dominance posed wider problems for Formula One, as spectators as a whole want more teams to be competitive. That concludes today's edition of World Today. In our top story, catastrophic situation at Gaza's hospital amid Israeli raid. Till then, I'm Daryl Baptist. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Thank you for watching and have a good day.